Mike, doing okay?
I'm doing good, thank you. You?
I'm doing wonderful,
Good.
thank you.
Janet, how much corn did you get put up?
29 pints.
Nice.
Yeah, and having a hard time finding any more. I'd like to put up about 25 more pints.
Don't they have some at Triple J?
I don't know. Might have to ask Stuart after the meeting.
All right, I think I have all the live streams up. So I guess whenever
Okay.
you're ready.
Charlie, are you back with us?
I am back with you.
All right. Is it 5 o'clock somewhere?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Right.
So
Well-
where's the bourbon?
Well,
Hang on.
it's not far. The Scott County Board of Adjustments meeting for September 3, 2020 will begin. We need approval of the August 6, 2020 meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have do I need a second, please? I need a second.
Yes, this is Janet. I'll make a motion to approve the August 2020 minutes for the Scott County Board of Adjustments.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The Board of Adjustment meeting minutes from August 6, 2020 are approved. We'll continue to the swear-in for those who are here to speak. And Charlie, that will leave this to you.
Oh, yeah, excuse me, Kim, but remember, we're going to do them as they come up, since it's kind of hard for me to have everybody's attention all at once. So as each
Okay.
person comes up, we'll get them.
Okay. Then we refer to our old business of application S 2020-20. Matt, will you update us on the activities from this?
Yeah, I
Thanks.
certainly can. So since the last meeting, the applicant did provide us with a copy of the survey that the board requested. I think that was included as part of the packet of information that I emailed to you all earlier this week. And so looking at that survey, it does appear that, to me, that there's not really any question about whether or not the applicant owns that property that's both upfront where they've constructed the new parking lot that's part of the discussion on this this application, or that back part that seems to be causing some contention with the neighbors.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't know if you wanted me to kind of go through the staff report on this. We have changed our recommendation. I know at the July meeting, the staff report was recommending approval of the application. At this time, we're taking, I guess, more of a neutral stance on this and not making a recommendation. I think it would be good for the board to sort of hear from the applicant and some of the neighbors, and then make a judgment based on the input from those parties today. Generally going through the staff report, I do think that it's possible for this business to coexist with the neighboring properties, and really it's just a matter of sort of fine tuning the conditional use permit and maybe some of the screening and other things, just to make sure that that relationship works well for everyone.
Okay. Is the applicant present to speak to us on the items we requested?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good.
I'm actually joined by, I don't know, you as well.
All right, can you say that again, Alan? I missed
We
it.
didn't hear
You said.
Josh Harp, our attorney, he's on a Zoom as well.
Okay. Yeah. Let me give him the ability to speak also. Then
Thank you, sir.
he should join us here in a second.
Charlie, is this where I need to get them sworn in?
Yes, I do believe so. One question first. Is that Josh Hart, H-A-R-T or H-A-R-P?
HARP.
T. Okay, thank you.
P is in Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is Paul. Okay, thank you. Now,
You're
Mr. Sweeney, if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I am sitting in the same room as Mr. Sweeney and want to first confirm that you're able to hear me, because if I unmute my computer, I'm afraid we're going to get some feedback. So does this work okay for us to not have two different microphones?
I can hear you.
Yeah, works for me.
Can the other board members hear?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. I'll guess take the board's pleasure as to whether it would be helpful for me to recap at this stage. I know that this is something that's been in front of the board already once before, or whether the board would simply prefer for me to dive right into some direct questions from Mr. Sweeney, get some things on the record that may not have been on the record in the past. We just defer to the chair as how the chair would prefer that I proceed in the most efficient manner.
Probably explain to us everything from the beginning.
Sure, I think that would be helpful. So by way of recap, my client purchased 3 undersized lots that were adjacent to the business at 390 Pains Depot Road and removed some dilapidated houses that stood there. And so then after removing those undersized lots, my client constructed a parking lot on 2 of those lots, specifically on 389 and 405 Pains Depot Road. The lot is professionally constructed. It is screened from the road. It looks, it's very well done. If any of the board has had an opportunity to drive by that location in the last several weeks, I'm sure you will have seen that and noticed that it is very well done. It looks good. Now, my client believed, as was discussed at the last meeting, that the existing conditional use permit that related to 390 Pains Depot Road would cover this use of 389 and 405. Now, I want to pause here and point out that I think that that is not an entirely unreasonable interpretation of the zoning ordinance itself. And the reason I say that is that under section 2.81A3, that clause provides that a parking adjacent or parking that is accessory to the principal use on a tract or parcel is permitted without the need for any type of conditional use permitting or application or review. Those terms, parcel and premises, are premises, I believe, is defined, and essentially it reverts back to whether it is a tract of property owned by a common owner. So my client, I believe, reasonably believed, and that upon purchasing these 2 properties, these adjacent properties, these became a part of the premises, and therefore using a parking structure, a parking lot, for the benefit of the principal use on that property is something that he did not need to apply for a conditional use permit for. I'll point out it would be different if there were a new facility, a completely different big building, a new structure, a new covered something going up onto that. Then that I don't think would be covered by section 2.81A3. However, parking itself, that is not public parking, but private parking for the benefit of the principal use, is something that does not require a conditional use permit act. Nevertheless, my client was informed that he did need to seek an amended conditional use permit, and so that's what was done. That's what was filed for and was brought before this board. Relative to whether an amended CUP necessary, I think that itself is an interesting question, to the extent that the CUP app for 389 and 405 is a part of the same tract of land, 390, or same premises, And it goes back to what I observed a moment ago, that parking that is accessory to the principal use is not something that requires additional permitting anyway. To the extent that it's not treated as part of the same premises, then a new conditional use permit app may have been a better avenue to file for specifically those two properties, 389 and 405, to obtain a permit for the parking that is accessory to 390. And the reason I point that out is I think that that would have maybe alleviated some of what I believe was some confusion and some distractions relative to the application as it was reviewed before the board last. That said, I want to address the things that the board expressed concern about. The first one was the ownership of the southeast portion of the property that is on the screen that is currently being shared. That portion of the lot that shows looks like 3 trucks and 3 trailers. That southeast portion of the lot, there was some question about whether my client actually owns that property. At the last meeting, Mr. Sweeney informed this board that he was in the process of obtaining a survey of that property to determine and be able to prove definitively that he does in fact own that. He's completed that, and we're prepared to provide testimony as well as a plat that shows that he does in fact own that property in question. Relative to that south, that too was the.
You're breaking up.
I'm sorry about that. Any better? Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If I need to repeat anything, by all means, please interrupt me and let me know. The other thing that was talked about at great length at the last meeting was the use of that southeast portion of the property, that what we'll call, I guess, the back lot for purposes of simplicity. Members of the board and or Mr. Perkins, I don't remember which, expressed some concern over that use, and specifically the concern over whether the use of that lot as parking was contemplated by my client's 2014 conditional use permit application. And the short answer to that, as we will be able to demonstrate, and as I think is frankly obvious from the record, is yes. As Mr. Kane pointed out at the last meeting, he pointed out that the development plan or site plan that my client submitted with that CUP app did show that portion of the property as being under the conditional use permit. The concern was over whether that site plan was adequate because it labels that back lot as yard. And so there was a question about whether that necessarily demonstrated that it was being used for parking. Yes. So this here is the site plan that is in question. To answer that, I want to point out 2 things. Number one is that that portion of the property, that back lot, has been used for parking since Mr. Sweeney has had the property, and he's already testified to this under oath at the last meeting. I also want to point out the language of the conditional use permit that was granted by the board. There is one particular condition that was specifically highlighted by, I believe it was Mr. Kane, indicating that because of the new parking lot, that there's one provision on the existing CUP that may need to be amended. And that provision refers to the parking area as a yard. Specifically, it says, the applicant shall park all vehicles and equipment inside the fenced yard. In other words, the CUP itself used the term yard to define the area where my client was required to park vehicles and equipment. And so I would submit that it's hardly surprising or scandalous that my client has done precisely that, use the term yard or use the yard for parking of the vehicles as contemplated by the CUP. Mr. Kane observed at the last meeting that the new lot was essentially a cleanup of the area. I would point out that incidentally, the 2 houses that were demolished by my client were dilapidated and in poor condition for a very long time. 405 was a dilapidated dump 6 years ago when this application was initially brought by my client. And photographs of the garbage piled up inside that house were submitted 6 years ago. And we still have those. You can show those if the board would like to see those. 389 also is not trashed in the same way that 405 was, but it too was in very poor condition and certainly has not been improved over the past 6 years. So as Mr. Kane observed, this was essentially a cleanup of the area, and it removed these undersized, dilapidated residential lots on these R1 lots for the purpose of putting in a parking area that is accessory to the principal use of the lot that they've been brought into. That second photo, the bottom photo on the screen now, shows as labeled the site location after the renovations. And you can just make out on that photograph that there is screening from the road that my client went ahead and put in and undertook to put in. I know that there was objection from Mr. Plunkett at the last meeting. His objections were based, as I recall, upon his assertions that my client's business causes, I believe his characterization was that my client's employees are coming in and out of the property at all times of the day, in the week, and the night. I do not believe that's accurate, and believe my client will be able to demonstrate that that's not a fair characterization of the property and the use of the property. I also want to point out that ironically, allowing the parking lot on the northwest corner of my client's property, the lot that we're here about, these two lots, 389 and 405, ironically, giving my client more room to park will necessarily have an alleviatory effect on the parking that needs to happen in the back lot, which is the lot and the only lot, I think, that Mr. Plunkett really expressed concern over. That is the lot that is across the railroad tracks from his property, which would bring me to the obvious, that is that Mr. Plunkett's property does not directly adjoin Mr. Sweeney's property. In fact, they're separated by an active freight railway that's used by R.J. Corman. Believe that because of that, complaints about both the noise and the visibility of my client's operations from Mr. Plunkett's place of business and home, believe they're rather exaggerated. I believe this is also all the more relevant because of the fact that the reason why we're here for this lot at 389 and 405, this is not even within sight of Mr. Plunkett's property. So from his property, he doesn't even have line of sight to the parking lot that we are here about. To the extent that there is any allegation that AFIX has violated the existing CUP, I would just point out that the board report prepared for this meeting has it right. And that is that the board report points out that the statute requires that if there is an allegation that my client has violated the CUP, there is a due process that's required for that, which requires a letter specifying exactly how he is alleged to have violated the conditional use permit, advance notice of a meeting, and an opportunity to be heard on precisely that. And that is where I would submit that the conversation at the last meeting got a bit out of kilter and off focus because it turned to allegations about whether my client has complied with the CUP that, frankly, was not necessarily expecting to have to discuss, though he is able to address those things. So I, believe that we'll be able to satisfy the board as to the appropriateness of this lot at 389 and 405. And I hope that that brief summary sort of brings the board back up to speed, if you will, and be happy to address any questions that I can address or through testimony, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from any of the others on the board? And let me say that My questions about the property ownership were not intended to be scandalous or in any way cause him a problem. I just wanted to know, because when it was drawn out on the plat, it did not look like it was included.
Certainly, that's fully understood, and to the extent that it may have seemed as if I was taking issue with that, I hope that's not what it seemed like.
Charlie, this is Janet. Do you have any concerns, or can you address some of the comments that Mr. Hart made to help us on this?
Well, yeah. And I believe I caught most of it. I was obviously trying to take notes at the same time. I don't quite understand the argument that the incorporation of new property as parking is somehow exempt from a modification to a conditional use. I don't think that's true. His conditional use covered exactly what it covered, nothing more. And I think to incorporate anything more simply had to be part of a modification. Secondly, about the rear yard, first off, according to the application that we're here on today, that's not part of it. So I'm assuming Mr. Harp is including that argument to say that it doesn't need to be part of it, or it cannot be part of any violation because it was anticipated in 2014 by this reference to the fenced-in yard. Boy, I've never thought about that before, and that's pretty remarkable. I'm assuming, and none of the pictures I've got, and in fact, I'm not even seeing the drawings and photos and whatnot that Mr. Harp referenced. But looking at the various handouts, I'm not even seeing anything that really tells me there is a fence around that backyard. But regardless, the drawings, the development plans and so on from 2014, I don't believe show that as having anything to do with it. So I don't believe that's correct, but at the moment, I'm not entirely ready to argue about that one. As far as the intervening railroad, I can't imagine that has any impact at all. Secondly, or thirdly, fourthly, wherever I am, Mr. Hart was talking about there's a statutory process for pursuing a violation and sanctions for a violation. He's totally right about that. And that's not what we're doing. I think that's relevant to the application to approve this expansion. I don't, but this isn't a violation. The violation process, which I think is included in your packet, just so that you know what that is. If he's in violation, then he's given notice. The board chair is given notice, then a meeting is set. And basically the meeting is held to determine, is there a violation? And if so, are they going to revoke the conditional use permit? Well, that's not why we're here. When he had his conversation with staff back in May after he got his notice of violation, they all apparently agreed that no, the best thing for him to do was file an application and try to get the whole thing approved. Well, that's what he's done. Now, if it's not approved, anything that is beyond 2014 should become subject to an enforcement action, but that's not why we're here. So if everything that can be approved is approved, there is no violation because it's basically been corrected. I just don't entirely agree with some of the arguments that have been made, but that one is absolutely correct. And as I said, that's not why we're here anyway. So I guess number one, the board needs to consider whether or not, I believe the 2 tracks that were incorporated as parking for this conditional use, whether that needed to come before. And all I can say is my position is if you've got a conditional use and you add anything to it, more square footage to your building, more parking, more anything, and certainly if you add more property, you've got to come back and get that modification approved so that it becomes part of your lawful conditional use. And if you don't do that, it is a violation, or as staff and applicant agreed to do this time, it's part of his application to get you to incorporate it. So the timing may be off, but that would in fact correct that problem. Once we've discussed that one, then I guess we can discuss whether or not, well, no, we really don't need to. I was going to say about that rear yard, because even though I don't believe it was part of that first one, it's not part of the application. It's not part of an enforcement notice and process. So, and I must confess to you that I was thinking it was part of this application. And in fact, when I was talking to Matt and I said, well, wait a minute, from what you said, isn't the rear lot part of the application? No, it's not. I went back and read the application, and Matt was, of course, correct. So we're not here to approve the rear lot. We're not here to say it's in violation. I believe it's in violation. And as such, it probably should be a part of an enforcement action since it's not part of this approval thing. But it really is not before you today. So anything about the rear lot, which unfortunately for Mr. Plunkett, the neighbor, I mean, that really includes him too. So unless he's got a problem with the front part, which I believe Mr. Hart's probably correct about that. I'm not so sure. Maybe sound might travel, but I'm pretty sure no visibility travels. That's really all we're talking about today. Now, if in fact staff chooses to do an enforcement on the rear lot, well, then we'll be back here for that. Or I guess if in the meantime, Mr. Sweeney files an application to get that approved, or maybe asking for an interpretation, well, then it could be back in that context. Now, I'm sure that's quite confusing. Am I correct, Janet?
Yes, very.
Okay. And I guess one other small point, back to Mr. Harp's argument that the railroad intervenes and therefore Plunkett is not an adjacent property owner and therefore basically he's irrelevant. Let's assume that's technically correct. There is no berm, there is no screening between the neighboring property. I don't think it's only the railroad that can object to that. It's still a violation of its conditional use permit. And I think it would still have to be, well, of course, we're here on an application for modification. That would be part of an enforcement procedure since that hasn't been made part of this application to approve a modification. So I guess basically the rear lot right now is not part of this, and the berm and the screening and whatnot between Sweeney and the railroad is really not part of this, and probably should be part of an enforcement action, which would follow the process that Mr. Hart pointed out a few moments ago. Oh, and I guess just for clarification, since none of those things are before you today, you can't approve any of those things. You can only approve what is before you, and that's what is, proper notice has been given for publication of the meeting, all that stuff. And since none of those things were part of the official notifications, whether to Mr. Sweeney or to neighboring properties or anybody else, those things are simply off the table today. Now, did that clear up any of it?
No. So then what are we? I'm confused.
All right. So all that leaves.
We were supposed to agree that he or decide that the part where they were now parking their equipment or storing some of the needed additional things, that's what we were here to approve.
Yes, ma'am. And that's what I thought too. And I did not go back and carefully look at the application. And then when Matt pointed that out, because he said, and I forget what he said specifically, but what he said indicated to me that, oh, that property is not part of Mr. Sweeney's current application. So I went back and looked at it and no, ma'am, it's not. Well, if it's not part of this and there is no separate enforcement action going, as Mr. Hart pointed out, then it's not before us. But no, I agree with you. I thought that was kind of like the main event today. But it's not part of his application and it's not part of an enforcement action. So therefore it has not come before you. So all we've really got is his application for modification, seeking approval of the parking lots he added in front which Mr. Harper argues didn't have to be approved in the first place, which I believe is incorrect. It should have been approved in the first place. So if you look at that plan today, and after discussions and witnesses, you approve that, then that's no longer in violation. Or if it did need approval, well, it's got it anyway. That's all we're really here to look at today, because the rest is just simply not formally before this board.
Charlie, won't we have to address that back at some point?
Yes, ma'am, we will, but we are
Not today.
strictly limited to only what's on your table, and that's determined by proper notices and so on. Well, obviously jurisdiction and other things, but you do have jurisdiction over those other things. But proper notices, there is not an enforcement action, and if he did not make it part of his application. So, and I apologize, because we spent a fair amount of time in July talking about that rear property.
Yeah.
Well, that's when I was thinking it was part of the application. And I forget, Matt, but that was just last week, late, when whatever you said clued me in that, oh, wait a minute, it's not. So it was not time to then get any kind of notices or get anything done to get it before you. So no, ma'am, it is simply not before you.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Who said, oh, Mike, yes.
Yeah, so I got a question. So just for my clarification, the 2014 application was for approximately 3.5 acres. And so then the current application, and then we get this finalized survey of the entire tract that shows 3.869 acres, which is a consolidation of tracts 1 through 8. Parcel 4 and parcel 6 or 7, I believe it's 7, was not part of the 14 application. Is that correct?
I can't see what you're looking at. I don't know why, but
Well, I'm looking at the survey. What was that?
I believe I can speak to that. Are you looking at the updated survey that is in the board packet?
Yes.
On that, and if you'll compare that to what's on your screen as well. So you said parcel 6 and 7, you do not believe were on that application. The parcel.
Well, parcel 4 is the big tract of land to the northwest.
I don't recall whether that one was or not. The two that we're here about are labeled as parcels 2 and 3 on that updated survey.
Right.
And they're on your
They're in
screen
front.
at 389 and 405, and that 389 and 405 are those are the respective addresses of those existing houses that are pre-existing houses that were removed.
Right. So the big area behind the main building that looks like in the tract in the back that has the 3 trucks and trailers are not part of the 14 application, which was for
Parcel 4.
2014, he's saying, the 2014 application. Is that the back
The
of parcel
2014.
7 or is it not on here?
If I may, I believe the 2014 application included parcels 5, 6, 7, and 8. That may not match with the development plan that you see for 2014. And I think part of the reason is that, a complete boundary survey had not been done at that point. Okay, so the applicant had owned the property by deed, but they didn't have a boundary survey. And so the development plan perhaps isn't as accurate as it would have been had that boundary been completely surveyed. Does that make sense?
It does, but that tract, that parcel 4 of the consolidated tract, the plat
Yes,
survey. is
that
a
was
big
purchased recently.
Okay, so that wasn't included in the 14 application that was conditionally
No.
approved.
No,
And so the parking area we're talking about that's not included in today's is
it's
back
parcels
portion of parcel
2 and
7.
3.
He said make sure it's not on parcel 4. What they see on parcel 4 is seed and shrub.
Yeah.
So what you see on parcel 4, I want to make, so parcel 4 was turf, it's grass, and that's what parcel 4, what you see in the picture, that's erosion netting, where we seed and strawed it and used erosion netting to keep anything out of the creek when we were doing all our work. So the parking lot is only on 389 and 405, which is, as Josh was saying, which parcel number are those? Parcels 2 and 3. Yeah, that's the only parking area. I just want to clarify that back area in 4 is just grass. I mean, we're just mowing it. It's grass.
Okay.
So the current application or the current request is for us to approve where he's parking at 389 and 405.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Well, the place looks 100% better, and we all agreed
Yes.
with that on the last meeting.
Yes.
Okay, that. And that's our goal.
Kim, I wanted to let you know, we do have one member of the public that has their hand raised.
Then does Charlie need to swear them in?
When they pop up, oh, Mr. Lawson?
Yes, hi, this is Philip Lawson on behalf of Greg Plunkett. I'm prepared just to make some brief comments.
If I may, Philip, just a second. I
Sure.
forgot to do this for Mr. Harp, but I'm sure Mr. Harp can still hear me. If both of you swear or affirm what you're about to say to be the truth, the best of your information and belief.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you all.
If I may, thank you again, board, for allowing us to speak just briefly, and thank you, Mr. Perkins. I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Perkins' assessment, I guess, of the what's before us today, and I guess the process regarding the back lot. To get to a point, I've spoken with Mr. Plunkett, who's here with me in my office today. Our issue has never been with the front, the 389 to 405. It was the back lot, which we've made and testified to about. And I agree with Mr. Perkins. That issue is not properly before the court today. We're just dealing with, or not before the court, before the board, the expansion in 389 to 405. But with that said, my hope is that the board would get this issue in the back lot before it sooner rather than later. And we don't need to rehash the testimony from July about the issues that the back lot is creating. Or alternatively, we would hope that Mr. Sweeney would do a separate application to modify and bring that issue before the board so that we can deal with the issues that the back lot presents in terms of noise, time, hours of operation, et cetera. So I just wanted to make that clear on behalf of Mr. Plunkett to the board, as well as Ms. Perkins, that we agree. We have no issue with the front. Our issue is with the back. So we wanted to make that clear to the board, but we hope that you would bring this issue up because, as you can see from the picture in front of you, Mr. Plunkett lives at 368, which is right next door to that back lot. And oftentimes, and we don't need to get into it today, there is a lot of activity at many hours of the day, early, late, et cetera, that is causing substantial disruption. And that's all.
Thank you for your input. Members of the board, do I have a motion or more questions of Matt?
I can make a motion if there's no questions.
I'll entertain a motion.
Since no one's complaining about the front and we've all agreed that it looks better, I move that we approve application S 2020-23 for the front 2 parking lots at 2893 Frankfurt Road, subject to staff suggestions, recommendations.
Could I make a suggestion on that motion, please?
Yes, sir.
That you be approving the request to modify the conditional use permit to include the new parking area on lots, what did you all say it was, 2 and 3?
2 and 3.
2 and 3. as part of the conditional use permit issued in February 2014.
So we want to modify the conditional use permit that was approved in 2014 to include the sections 2 and 3 of the current parking area in the front. Is that adequate?
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify with the applicant that he's okay with all 11 conditions. In particular, I wanted to make sure that they're all right with condition 11 regarding a planning commission initiation for rezoning on the project site.
Can you give me one moment? You are referring to the conditions that are recommended.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Number 11. Yes.
Yes.
We don't have an objection to that. No.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
Sonia, did you say application number S?
I did. I read the wrong number. I was getting ready to correct it. It should be application S 2020-20.
There you go.
There you go.
Good job.
Looking at the wrong side of my page. Sorry.
It's okay. I will second that motion.
All of those, I have a motion, a first and a second. All of those in favor to approve the conditional use permit for 2020-20, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion,
Was that unanimous? I couldn't tell.
Yes, I think.
yes.
Okay. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready to move to the next one?
I believe that concludes our business. May Mr. Sweetie and I be excused?
Yes, sir, and thank you for your input.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a great evening.
Bye. We're ready for the new applications. S 2020-23 for Jared Sutton conditional use permit. Matt, will you speak to us?
Yes. So yeah, as you can see in the staff report, this is a conditional use permit application. The applicant has a 10-acre lot and would like to put a secondary single-family residence on the site for a family member. It's located at 2893 Frankfurt Road, which is a lot that uses an access easement to get to the back that serves several other lots. As far as staff can tell, it looks like from the application materials that the proposed house site would meet both our setback requirements and looks as though it would meet our recommended 100 feet of separation that we usually recommend. So I am recommending approval of the application.
Is the applicant present?
I believe he is. Let me give me just a second. Well, while the applicant comes on, I will say, I think there was, I did speak to one neighbor and I think he's present. I don't know if he's wanting to speak on it later, but we do have one other person who had expressed some interest.
So sorry.
This is Jared Sutton.
Hello?
Mr. Sutton, if you would raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm the statement you're to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like to explain to us about your application, sir?
Yeah, it's just a single family residence. It's if looking at the plat there, it's east of the residence down toward the wood line.
And it is 100 feet, going to be 100 feet from your
Yes, ma'am.
property?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said this is for a family member?
Yes.
What are the dimensions from the neighboring properties? How far from each of your property?
I don't have that information. You can see
Okay.
from the plat, you're probably 250 foot from our house down to where the property would be. The next closest is on the other side of the easement to our house.
And there won't have to be an extra driveway or anything put in?
There will be on our, but it'll be on our property.
Okay.
There's
that's what
already
I
a
was trying
road
to
there.
ask.
There'll just be gravel added to it.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else on the board have questions of Mr. Sutton?
Charlie, everything looks okay to you?
The only question I had, and I'm sure Matt's already looked at it, he talked about the separation between the residences. What about the setback from the property line? Is it at least 50 feet?
Oh, yes.
Oh, then, no, there's nothing wrong. This has been something that we've done to assist families for years. So no, this seems utterly appropriate.
Okay.
Matt, if we have the neighbors that would like to speak? We need to let Charlie swear them in.
He should be able to speak now.
Okay.
Yeah, this is David Dale. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Dale, can you raise your right hand, please?
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you, sir.
So Matt has provided us with information on the proposal and so forth. And I guess as it looks on paper, we don't really have objections to it, but we do still have some questions. The biggest of which is the type of structure that's going to be built. Is it going to be a permanent structure, rough square footage, those types of things, consistent with surrounding homes?
It'll be a 3-bedroom house.
Okay. Then I think, given that, we don't have really any further questions or concerns.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second neighbor?
I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised at this time.
Okay,
I think most of the other attendees are applicants for later applications.
okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions of Mr. Sutton or concerns? I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, this is Janet. I make the motion that we approve application number S-2020-23, the Jared Sutton property that was applying for conditional use permit for a secondary single-family residence on Frankfurt Pike.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Would all of those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries for the approval of S 2020-23. Thank you, Mr. Sutton.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
So we'll move on to application 2020-24 for a conditional use permit for a home occupation. Matt, would you speak to us on this application, please?
Yes, I can do that. I will note the applicant for this one doesn't seem like they are in attendance, but we can hear the application, I guess, if you all want.
If there are no unanswered questions, if it seems straightforward and it gets a recommendation of approval, then yes, we've often gone ahead and heard the things rather than clog up later or something. Unless, of course, there's opposition and, again, questions that are unanswered.
Okay.
Do we have any neighbors or opposition? Matt?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard from any
All right.
neighbors on this one.
All right.
So this application is for a home occupation. It's at 694 P Ridge Road. The applicant stated in their materials that, you know, they were looking to mostly operate by mail and receive trap shooting shotguns that they would then raffle off for, I think it was for a nonprofit. I believe is what they had said.
Yes.
Basically, they're not planning on having, you know, any sales or anything like that at the house. They're not planning on having anyone come and visit their house at all. It would all be done by mail or UPS, I'm sure. So I had no issues with the application. I'm recommending approval with the 3 conditions of approval that are in the staff report.
Do we have any questions from the board or discussion?
Oh, are they licensed firearm dealers or they just
Yes,
shotgun?
they're in the process of getting their license. That's how they were brought to our attention. So when people apply for their license through the ATF always does a really good job of having them contact their local planning agency to see if they need any additional permits from us. So by them getting the conditional use permit, assuming that the board approves it, that'll be basically a step in their process to get their licensing from the ATF.
So by approving this application, this is just, it doesn't, I mean, I've bought and sold guns in my life, and there's a guy in Shelby County that actually worked. He was a licensed firearm dealer, and he sold out of his house, out of his garage, and he had a lot of traffic coming and going. And I was just curious how this application sort of confirms that it's only going to be for a few shotguns to raffle off to raise money for a trap shooting team, and doesn't grow into something bigger once it's approved and down the road.
That's a good question. So a lot of times with home businesses like this, I guess sort of one of the enforcement mechanisms is really the neighbors. If if clients start coming to the property and it becomes a nuisance, we will definitely hear about it, and then we would take, as we discussed in the first application, we would take the appropriate enforcement actions and have them come back to the board for a hearing.
I mean, could we make a motion to approve it subject to only raffling off for fundraising?
I think that's implied just because that's what they applied for.
Okay.
So the parameters of their conditional use permit would be, as long as they're only, raffling and basically doing things through the mail, they're approved. If they ever want to, have in-person sales, they would need to come back to the board to modify that conditional use permit to allow that, and we would notify the adjoining property owners.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I also think once they're a licensed dealer, ATF monitors them and does audits on their activity, right?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll entertain a motion.
This is Janet. I'll make the motion that we approve application number S-2020-24, the Alicia Cassia Neva property requesting the conditional use permit. And this is based on the 3 conditions of approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Is that Sonia?
Yep, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Do I have all of those in favor? Please say aye.
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 S-20-20-24 is approved. We'll move on to the next one. S-2020-25. conditional use permit from the Hughes family. Matt, will you explain to us?
So this is another one where I don't see the applicant on the list of attendees. So I guess if there are questions or concerns, we can always postpone taking action till later, but I can go through the staff report now. I guess just off the top, I classified this as a home occupation. The applicant's home isn't on this lot per se, but it is on the adjoining property. And as far as I know, those two have basically been the same farm for many years.
Yes.
So that's, I guess that was sort of a judgment on my part as far as how to handle this application. But the applicant has, roughly 132 acres. And it looks like from their submitted materials that they will have access off of the new leg of the bypass that's nearing completion. And they are wanting to construct a pole barn. Basically, what they're looking to do is have a way that they can process produce that they grow on the farm, as well as a way that they can have retail sales of things that they're growing and producing on the farm. I don't really have any problems with it. The only thing that would maybe make this different from some other home occupation permits is that I'm recommending that they get a development plan approved by the Planning Commission or by staff if it's deemed to be what we would consider a minor development plan by the definitions in our subdivision and development regulations. But I am recommending approval of the application.
Oh, one question.
Have some-
Did you say their entrance would not be the farm entrance off Long Lick, but would be off the bypass?
That would be my assumption based on the location that they were proposing in their application.
It's what's now would be the back of the farm.
Yes,
Oh.
yes, they're showing this barn would be on the very back of their farm.
Okay, very good.
Mike, you had a question?
Well, I was wondering if there was something that would show the new bypass corridor in relationship to their property and where it comes in.
Yeah, that would be useful. I don't have a map with me that would overlay the new bypass. Unfortunately. So I guess, I don't know if you all, can you see my mouse on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So based on,
You all can see the screen.
oh yeah, based on what they submitted, it looks as though the barn would be about here where I've got my mouse.
Uh-huh.
And it looks as though, at least from their drawing, that the new leg of the bypass would come in roughly through here on their property.
Okay.
So that's sort of why I made the assumption that, the entrance for this would be off of the bypass rather than, from the Long Lick side of the property.
Makes sense.
It makes sense if you're having a business that would have the more traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other questions or concerns?
So is the bypass, is that a state road?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, so entrance will be by permit,
Yes.
and there'll be, are there utilities back there? I mean, a 5,000 square foot barn or 4,000, it's a big barn. 4,900 square feet. I guess is it going to be retail mainly, or is it going to be processing mainly?
So
Or do you know?
from their application material, it sounded as though the majority of it would probably be used for the packaging, storage, coolers and freezers. And it sounded as though a smaller part up near the front of the barn would be used for the retail space. But as far as a percentage split, I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
Do we have any other questions? Do I have a motion?
This is Sonia. I move that we approve application S 2020-25 from Stuart Hughes, a request for home occupation at parcel 108-20-004.000, taken into subject staff recommendations, in particular the minor development plan, which is listed in number 4.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Janet.
All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Aye.
Motion and vote have carried, so 2020-25 is approved. We ready for the next one?
I'm ready if you are.
2020-26, a variance to exceed the lot sizes.
Okay. I have the applicants coming on, but I can, so there's 3 lots in the Pemberley Cove cluster development that the applicant is looking to consolidate down to 2 lots. So I guess just in general, as some background, the subdivision and development regulations allow for cluster neighborhoods to be developed. Basically, the purpose of them is to try to preserve large tracts of agricultural land by allowing a residential density in our agricultural areas at the same density. So basically, the 1 dwelling per 5 acres that we allow in general, but by allowing the residential lots to be a maximum of 2 acres, and I believe it's down to forget how small they can go, maybe about 1 acre or so. And so then the remaining balance is sort of set aside in this preserved area that's not allowed to be subdivided in future. So the application before you, let me go actually to the next screen. If you can see the map on the screen, the applicant is working with lots 100, 102, and 104 on Pemberley Cove Lane. I believe the applicant said that he lives actually at 104. And so the purpose of this application would, or if this application is approved, they would essentially dissolve, I would guess, lot 102, and it would be absorbed into lots 100 and 104. But under our current regulation, under the regulations for a cluster development, both of these lots would then be larger than 2 acres. So what he's asking for is for you all to allow him to have lots that are bigger than 2 acres in this cluster development. I don't really see any issues with this. As I note in the staff report, I don't think it would adversely impact the public health, safety, or welfare, or really alter the character of the area. You know, if this is approved, it would take a minor plat that would just be staff level review. So I am recommending approval of the application.
Is the applicant ready to speak?
He is on here. I think he should be unmuted now. Yes.
Hello.
Charlie? Hi,
This is Tim.
Charlie.
Yes, sir. Mr. Strunk, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Well, give you a little background. If you look there at the plot, lot 102, as you can see, is a little bit narrower than my other lots. And 100 is actually more narrow than it appears because along Stone Road, there's a utility easement for KU, and AT&T has fiber and telephone trunk line running through there. And there's also a landscaping easement. So the problem I've had is 100 and 102 have been so narrow that I haven't been able to sell those lots. They've been on the market for 3 years and I haven't got a sale. I've had 2 people within the last month, one of which I have a sales contract right now with, that says if we could combine those 2 lots and make a bigger buildable area, then they'll purchase it. So I think it'd be a win for everybody. I get to sell a couple lots that's been on the market a long time, and they get a nice building site, and the county gets a big house built that'll go on the PVA rolls.
Do we have any neighbors who have indicated an interest or questions about this?
I've not gotten any phone calls. I'm not seeing, at least at this time, I'm not seeing any neighbors with their hands raised.
Okay. Any board members have questions?
You're in agreement with everything, Charlie?
Yes, ma'am.
And your house is at 101?
My current residence is 104. I've been there for about
Okay.
15 years. And you can see 104 is a little bit narrow too. So I'm actually going to increase 104 about 50 feet going into what's now 102 to give me a little more side yard. So, and then along Stone Road, I mentioned there a minute ago that that's a utility easement and a maintenance easement. Our homeowners association that takes care of that property in the middle, it's not labeled, but that's a lake and a green area. The acreage along Stone Road that's currently in lot 100 is going to go to the homeowners association. So that'll help my lot too a lot. And that's one of the primary reasons I was willing to sell one lot instead of two, because I can make my yard a little bit bigger.
I'll entertain a motion from the board.
Okay, this is Janet again. I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we approve application number S-2020-26, the Tim Strump property, to allow variance for a 2-acre lot size at the Pemberley Cove Lane Cluster Subdivision with the conditions of approval. I think there's 4 of them.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it. Sonia.
All those in favor say aye.
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 S-2020-26 is approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. Moving right along. S-2020-27, variance for a yard setback. Matt?
Yes. This application, like you mentioned, it's at 354 Henderson Road. The applicant's looking to reduce the side yard setback from 50 feet to 5 feet. If you look at the image of the property in the staff reporter, the same one here on the screen, you can see the existing house is already closer than 50 feet. So this sounds like a bigger request than it really is. But the applicant is looking to construct an addition onto the house, and part of that would be an attached garage, and it would be, I guess, as you look at the property on the screen and in the staff report, it would be on the right-hand side, and the applicant did include some drawings showing how that addition would sit on the house, and that they are requesting a 5-foot setback. I looked at the how it would affect the neighboring properties and other properties in that area. It seems like it wouldn't really alter the character of the properties in the general vicinity. As you can see from that image alone, there's other properties that are sort of undersized lots where they have garages and things like that that are close to the property lines. As I also mentioned in the staff report, I think with this being an undersized lot, I think it's about a ½ acre. It's only about 1/10 of the size lot that these setbacks were designed for. So I am recommending approval of the application with the 3 conditions in the staff report.
Excuse me, question, Matt.
Yeah.
The agenda says 6 feet. Your report says 5 feet.
Yeah, that I made. I did not have the final survey that was included in the packet at the time that I wrote the agenda up. So that's why there's a difference there.
So the 5 is correct?
The 5 is correct.
5
Yes.
is correct. Okay.
Yes, the 5 is correct. That's what the survey that they had Joel do came back with.
And one more thing, which side of the house did you say this variance was going to be on? Where he's already up to the line or on the driveway side?
It's on the image on the screen. It's on, or in the image in the staff report. Even it's on the right hand side, which is the north side of the house.
Okay, so not where it's incredibly close to the line, but where there's at least a little opening.
Yes.
Okay.
Have you heard from the neighbors?
I have not heard from any neighbors on this application.
So is it just for the garage or is it to also add on to the back of the house?
I think it's both based on the drawing. There's an addition sort of on the back, but it also looks like there is an attached garage that will go on the side.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm asking and reading, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
So as you're looking at the aerial, you have in the right, the driveway to the right, where the white van is.
Yes.
Is that going to be a 2-car garage?
Yes, that's what they're proposing.
And it's going to extend back.
Yeah, it'll kind of come and then
There's
wrap around
overhead
the
power-
back.
there's an overhead power line, transmission line back there that comes pretty close to that back corner of that other existing garage.
Yeah.
You can see the shadow of the crossbar. You know, as long as they're clear of that, I don't know what the width of that easement is through there, or who that is, but as long as they're clear of that and they're not going to extend past that existing garage, stay off the utility easement, they're already jammed in there like, you know, pretty tight, but so are the neighbors. So if that's the only thing I see that would concern me, but other than that, like I said, the setbacks are already kind of off anyway. So it's just more of the same.
Anybody have any other questions or discussion? Guidance from Charlie?
This is Lori Taylor. I'm a power of attorney for my parents who are the homeowners for 354 Anderson. I just have some.
Can I stop you just a second? Charlie, would you like to swear her in, please?
Yes, Ms. Taylor, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statements you're to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes, sir. I do.
All right, now you can proceed to tell us. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, what we're talking about here is indeed a 2-car garage, but on the right side, looking at the photo, the garage would be not side by side, but 1 car in front of the other. And then the addition would connect the back side of the garage to the house for my mother, who is needing some handicap accessible addition and ease of getting in and out of the vehicle. We have talked with the neighbors, the Cold Irons next door, and they're willing to write a letter if we need one. But we have gotten the go ahead, from all of that. We have also, with Mr. Sexton there, contacted the utility company, and we have gotten an estimate actually to have that power line moved back toward the back of the property. So that is actually in the works as well. So the bottom line is we just want to add the garage onto the side of the house there for her, and then a bedroom with a handicap bathroom onto the back after that power line is moved. So that way she has ease of access.
I understand. Any other members of the board have questions?
have a
I'll
question.
So
entertain.
the garage, the new garage will have double doors, right? So there'll be one in the front and one in the rear.
Yes, it would have one on the front, one on the end, and the cars would be kind of parked one behind the other.
Sonia, you had a
Then when you
question?
leave, you turn around.
I was just wondering if we had to have a condition on the recommendations that would take into account the power lines being approved and moved.
Matt or Charlie, you'll have to answer that one. I don't know.
Well, I mean, legally, if they do encroach or would encroach on the easement, then they've got to clear that with either whatever it is, Bluegrass or KU or whomever. So, I mean, legally, they've got to do that whether we say yay or nay.
Okay.
Obviously, if we leave that out of our motion, we're not approving something that would encroach on someone else's easement. So, yeah, obviously, the applicants know they've got to deal with that, so it really doesn't need to be in our motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Just want to verify.
Thank you. We learn something new every meeting.
And I forget something new every meeting. So.
I'll entertain a motion.
This is Sonia. I'll move that we approve application S20-2027 at 354 Anderson Road, variance to reduce the side yard setback from 50 to 5 to build a 2-car garage and a house addition. Taking into account the staff recommendations.
Thank you. I have a second.
Excuse me, that approval would be subject to staff recommendations.
Subject to staff recommendations.
Thank you.
Like a second.
Mike has seconded. Do I have a vote for all of those in favor, please? Aye.
That's the kind
Motion.
of guys, come on.
Motion and vote has approved S2020-27. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other items on the agenda?
Yeah, bidding one another adieu.
I do.
Everybody have a safe Labor Day weekend.
Thank you.
Even you, Janet.
Thanks, Charles. Payback is tough.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I've been paying it for years.
About 14, right?
Makes up
Meeting
the last
adjourned.
month's short meeting.